When a burned-out city girl trades deadlines for ocean tides on a private island retreat, she's hoping for rest, not romance. But as quiet days turn into charged encounters and walls begin to fall, she's forced to confront a truth she's spent years avoiding. Maybe what she's been missing isn't out there in the world. Maybe it's something or someone far closer than she imagined. Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Anika Desai sat frozen at her desk, eyes locked on the flickering cursor in the draft of her 12th email of the morning. Outside her office window, Manhattan pulsed with relentless energy. Honking taxis, flashing billboards, the chatter of a city that never asked if you were tired. She used to thrive in that rhythm. Now it just felt like noise. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but her mind was blank. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears, echoing the migraine pressing behind her eyes. On her desk, 3 cold coffees stood like sentinels to her collapse. One half full, one untouched, one spilled and congealed into a sad, sticky ring. "Anika," came a clipped voice from the doorway. She turned. Her boss, Trevor, stood with the same expression he always wore. Vaguely irritated, like he smelled something unpleasant, but couldn't identify what. "We need the Phoenix deck updated before the client call at 4. Make sure the numbers reflect Q3 projections." "I sent you that version yesterday," she replied, forcing calm into her voice. Trevor didn't blink. "Well, it's not in my inbox now. Do it again." He walked away before she could answer. She stared at the empty doorway, pulse fluttering in her throat. For a wild second, she imagined hurling her laptop out the 24th floor window. Instead, she closed the email draft, sat back, and pressed her palms against her temples. Her phone buzzed beside her. Lena, still alive? Need you to text me a single word if you're too exhausted to make full sentences." Anika smiled weakly. Her thumbs moved. "Anika, exhausted doesn't even scratch the surface." "Lena, that's it. I'm pulling the ripcord. 1 week. Somewhere warm. Private island. My cousin's place. You need out." Anika blinked. "Anika, wait, Nikolai's Island? That's a real place?" "Lena, yes. And he's not even there half the time. You'll be alone. You need to be alone, Ani." She stared at the screen. The idea sounded indulgent. Escapist. Irresponsible. And yet, the city had taken everything from her this year. Her time. Her peace. Her relationship. The version of herself that used to wake up excited for the day. The version that wore color and listened to music and laughed for no reason. Anika leaned back in her chair. Her reflection in the dark screen of her laptop stared back, drawn, tired, and dull-eyed. She looked like someone else. She opened her drawer, pulled out her PTO form, and filled it in with shaking hands. The roar of the private seaplane's engine faded into a low hum as it touched down on the turquoise water, skimming the surface before gently drifting toward the dock. Anika pressed her forehead to the cool glass of the window, staring at the island ahead. From above, it had looked like a painting, dense jungle spilling into white beaches, framed by an ocean so blue it didn't seem real. But as the aircraft slowed to a stop, the details sharpened. Smooth stone pathways winding through lush greenery, a gleaming villa nestled in the hillside, and hammocks swaying lazily between palm trees. She was still in disbelief that she'd agreed to this. 1 week. No meetings, no deadlines. Just quiet. A staff member greeted her at the dock. A young woman in a linen uniform with a wide smile and a tray holding a chilled glass of passion fruit juice. "Welcome to Eden Isle, Ms. Desai. You're just in time for sunset." Anika offered a tired smile, murmured a thank you, and followed the woman down a curved path lined with frangipani and hibiscus blooms. The villa emerged through the trees, modern yet warm, all smooth stone, wood, and open space that let the outside in. The living area opened straight onto an infinity pool that looked like it emptied into the sea itself. She slipped off her shoes and padded barefoot across the cool floor. "This is insane," she breathed. "You have the whole south side to yourself," the woman said, gesturing toward a private suite. "And Mr. Vasiliev mentioned he'd be arriving later this evening. He doesn't usually stay during guests' visits, but He's making an exception. Anika turned. Wait, Nikolai's here? The woman smiled politely. Just for the evening, I believe. Of course. A billionaire just dropping by his own island. Anika felt a flicker of curiosity. Lena had mentioned her cousin was reclusive, especially after stepping down from his tech empire. She hadn't said much else, though the way she spoke of him carried a strange mix of affection and warning. After a long shower and a quick change into a breezy linen dress, Anika wandered outside, drawn by the colors bleeding across the horizon. The sun was melting into the water, the sky streaked with shades of amber and rose. She stepped barefoot onto the patio, cradling a glass of wine, and let the warm wind tangle her hair. That's when she noticed him. A figure stood near the edge of the pool, tall and motionless, staring out to sea. The breeze caught the open collar of his shirt, his sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms dusted with gold from the setting sun. He turned slowly, as if sensing her before she spoke. Nikolai Vasiliev. His presence hit like the first plunge into cold water, shocking, bracing, sharp. He had the kind of face you didn't forget. Strong lines, dark eyes that gave nothing away, and a calm intensity that felt dangerous. You must be Anika, he said, voice deep and lightly accented. Russian, she realized, but softened by years abroad. I am. And you must be the man who owns this slice of paradise. She lifted her wine glass. Thanks for sharing. His mouth curved into a half smile. I don't share often. Their eyes held for a moment longer than polite. Then he nodded once, almost like a farewell, and walked back into the villa without another word. Anika stood still, pulse ticking in her neck. Well, that was unexpected. The morning sun spilled golden light across the shoreline, the waves whispering a soft rhythm against the sand. Anika wandered barefoot along the curve of the beach, toes sinking into the warm grains, a silk wrap fluttering at her hips. For the first time in what felt like years, her shoulders weren't tight with tension. No calendar reminders. No buzzing phone. Just the wind. The water. The weightlessness of silence. She didn't expect to see him again so soon. Nikolai stood several yards ahead, barefoot like her, shirtless and sun-drenched, ankle-deep in the surf with a black dog trotting beside him. He was tossing a small piece of driftwood into the water, and the dog, sleek and wolf-like, chased it with boundless joy. She almost turned back, but something in her hesitated. Didn't peg you for the dog and sunrise type, she called out, not too loudly. He turned, one brow raised, a hint of amusement in his expression. Most people assume I sleep in dark rooms surrounded by servers. She smiled. Tech billionaire stereotypes. Hard to shake. He walked toward her, the dog padding beside him. This is Luca, he said, gesturing to the animal. He's more friendly than I am. Anika crouched and offered her hand. Luca sniffed it, then pressed his head into her palm with a soft huff. Seems like you've got a better reputation than your owner, she said to the dog. Nikolai smirked faintly. He doesn't give interviews. They began walking together without discussing it, the ocean curling gently around their ankles. Conversation came in stops and starts. Where she was from, how she ended up in marketing, why she needed to disappear. He didn't interrupt. He didn't advise. He just listened. I think I forgot how to breathe back home, she admitted, eyes on the horizon. Everything was deadlines, impressions, proving my worth over and over again. It just wore me down. I know the feeling, he said quietly. When I was still running the company, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. convinced I was falling behind. On what? I don't even know. She glanced at him. So you disappeared too? He nodded. After a while, building more just felt like breaking myself apart one piece at a time. I left before I hated everything I'd made. There was something raw in his voice, not broken, but not healed either. She recognized it. She wore the same bruises in different places. They reached a cluster of rocks where tide pools glistened like mirrors. Nikolai knelt to let Luca drink, while Anika sat on a smooth stone, letting the sun warm her legs. He looked over at her. You're different from the usual guests Lena sends here. Oh, how so? They come to escape boredom. You came to escape something else. Anika studied him. And what about you? What are you escaping? Nikolai didn't answer right away. His eyes met hers, dark, unreadable, and quietly intense. Noise, he said finally. The world's too loud when you've got nothing left to say. They sat in that stillness for a moment, the wind weaving between them. It wasn't flirtation, exactly. But it wasn't not either. And for the first time in a long time, Anika didn't want to run from it. Anika found herself drifting toward Nikolai more often than she intended. Morning walks, shared meals on the villa's breezy terrace, the occasional late-night conversation that started casually and ended somewhere far more personal. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Naturally. Quietly. Like the tide. Tonight, the sky was dark velvet, stretched wide above the open patio where they sat sipping wine and listening to music that drifted lazily from an old speaker. Luka dozed at Nikolai's feet, one ear twitching in his sleep. A soft breeze stirred Anika's hair, and the scent of grilled pineapple still lingered in the air from dinner. "You built your company from scratch, right?" she asked, twirling her glass between her fingers. He nodded, his gaze fixed somewhere distant. "My parents died when I was 16. I had a choice, sink or build something strong enough to carry me." There was no bitterness in his voice. Just a cool, steady tone, like he'd said it too many times to feel it anymore. "That's heavy," she said softly. He glanced at her. "Not the worst thing. It teaches you where your edges are. And now you live alone on an island." Nikolai gave a dry chuckle. "Not exactly a fairy tale ending, is it?" Anika tilted her head. "I'm not sure it isn't." He looked at her then, really looked. "You think solitude is a reward? I think sometimes it's the only way to hear your own thoughts." That earned a small nod of approval from him. "You're sharper than most people I know." "I'm tired of being sharp," she said before she could stop herself. "I want to feel soft again. Open. I want to wake up and not hate everything that waits for me." Something shifted in his expression, barely there, but unmistakable. A flicker of recognition. Of pain. "I had someone," he said slowly. "Back when everything was still shining. She sold my private messages to a reporter. Turned a fight we had into clickbait. After that, I stopped inviting people in." Anika blinked. "God, Nikolai." He shrugged, but his jaw clenched. "No one ever feels sorry for the billionaire." "I'm not sorry for you," she said quietly. "I just get it. What it's like to be hurt by someone who said they loved you." They sat in silence, the kind that was thick with unspoken understanding. Then he stood, set down his glass, and walked to the edge of the pool, gazing at the moon's reflection. "I'm not good at this," he murmured. "Letting people see the cracks." She stood too, moving beside him. The ocean whispered in the distance, and the air between them shifted, warmer, charged. "You don't have to let me see everything," she said. "Just let me see you." Nikolai turned slowly, eyes locked on hers. She didn't know who moved first. Maybe it didn't matter. All she knew was the heat of his hands on her waist, the softness of his mouth meeting hers, and the dizzying ache that bloomed as the kiss deepened. Slow, searching, full of everything they'd been holding back. When they pulled apart, breathless, neither said a word. They didn't need to. The air felt different that night. Thicker. Heavier. Like the island itself was holding its breath. Anika stood by the open balcony doors of her suite, the sheer curtains fluttering around her legs. The moonlight cast silver shadows across the hardwood floors, and somewhere down the hill, she could hear the ocean breathing against the shore. The kiss still burned on her lips. Her fingertips tingled where Nikolai had touched her. She shouldn't want this. It was reckless. Temporary. But every time she told herself that, his eyes came back to her, quiet, haunted, full of a longing that mirrored her own. A soft knock came at the door. She didn't hesitate. When she opened it, he was there, barefoot, shirt unbuttoned, eyes darker than the night behind him. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Neither could I." He stepped inside, and for a moment, they just stood there, the silence thrumming with all the things they weren't saying. Then she reached for him. The kiss was different this time, urgent, searching, no longer tentative. His hands found her waist, then her back, then lower, as if trying to memorize the curve of her body. She sank into him, into the strength and the softness and the warmth. Her fingers threaded through his hair. He let out a sound low in his throat, and it sparked something electric in her. He carried her to the bed without breaking the kiss. The world fell away. Time slowed. Clothes were forgotten in a trail across the floor, her wrap, his shirt, the walls they'd both so carefully built. She'd expected fire, and there was fire, but there was also something else. gentleness, reverence, as if he was trying to relearn what it meant to be close to someone and not be hurt. He touched her like she mattered, like she wasn't just a moment in his story, but a chapter he hadn't dared to write until now. She gave as much as she received, her body, her breath, her quiet gasps in the dark. She'd forgotten what it was like to feel wanted without conditions, desired without demands. When it was over, they lay tangled in the sheets, chest to chest, the quiet broken only by their steady, slowing breaths. Nikolai's voice came soft, rough in her ear. "You make the world stop spinning." Anika swallowed hard. She didn't reply, because part of her wanted to believe it, and part of her was already terrified of what would happen when it started spinning again. The first distant roll of thunder came late in the afternoon. Anika stood on the edge of the villa's terrace, watching as heavy gray clouds coiled across the sky like smoke. The light had changed, more bronze than gold, and the ocean, once clear and calm, was beginning to churn. She hadn't seen Nikolai all day. After last night, she'd woken alone. No note, no sound, just rumpled sheets and the faint scent of his cologne on her skin. She'd told herself it didn't matter, that it was just a moment, a beautiful lapse in time. No promises were made. And yet, the quiet felt heavy. She found him just before sunset, in the glass-walled lounge near the cliff's edge, his attention fixed on his laptop. Rain had begun to tap against the windows in soft, scattered rhythms. "I wasn't sure if you were avoiding me," she said, stepping inside. He didn't look up immediately. "I had calls. Some things with the foundation in Zurich. I didn't mean to," he paused, finally turning to her. "Disappear." Anika folded her arms, leaning against the wall. "You're good at disappearing." Nikolai exhaled. "You think I'm pushing you away, aren't you?" He stood slowly. "I don't know what you want me to say, Anika. Last night wasn't planned." "I know it wasn't," she said, voice tightening. "But it happened. And this? Silence and distance? It's confusing." The storm broke open above them with a sudden gust of wind, rain lashing the windows like a warning. "I told you I wasn't good at letting people in," he said, walking toward her. "I've built walls around everything, my name, my money, my life. And then you show up, and it feels like I can't keep them up around you. That scares the hell out of me." Lightning flashed across the ocean, followed by a sharp crack of thunder. She didn't flinch. "What scares me," she said softly, "is that I feel safe here. With you. But I don't know if this is real or just borrowed time on a beautiful island with a man who's already halfway out the door." He was close now, too close. The air between them sparked like static. "I'm not out the door," he said, his voice low and certain. "But you don't know how to stay." They stood there in the stillness, the storm crashing around them, neither one willing to look away. "I'm trying," he said finally. "I don't know what this is. But I know I don't want it to end." Anika's breath caught. Maybe that was all she needed to hear. She stepped into him, rested her forehead against his chest. His arms came around her instinctively, like muscle memory, like something his body had been waiting to do all day. Outside, the wind howled and the rain poured down in sheets. Inside, they stood wrapped in each other, weathering something far more dangerous than the storm. The island smelled different after the storm. Cleansed. Sharper. Like the earth had exhaled. Anika stepped barefoot onto the dew-damp grass just after sunrise, the sky still streaked with clouds fading to gold. The wind had settled, but the waves still rolled with a quiet power, reminding her of everything that had shifted the night before. She wrapped her sweater tighter around herself, breathing in the salt, the green, the rain-washed air. Behind her, the villa was still. She hadn't seen Nikolai since they'd stood together in the stormlit lounge, his arms around her, his heartbeat solid beneath her cheek. They hadn't said anything more. Just held on as if that might anchor them both. And now she was bracing for the drift. She found him on the beach, barefoot, dressed in black linen pants and a simple tee, skimming stones across the shallows like a boy who'd never built a billion-dollar empire. Luca lay at his feet, half asleep in the warming sand. "I thought you'd be gone," she said as she approached. "I thought about it," he admitted without turning. "Old habits." Anika stood beside him, letting their silence stretch. "I don't know what happens after this," she said finally. "I go back to New York, and what? Keep pretending I'm okay in a life that's slowly draining the color out of me." He tossed another stone. It skipped 3 times, then disappeared. You don't have to go back to that version of your life, he said. You could change everything. Easy for you to say. You bought your freedom. He turned to her then, sharply. You think that makes it easier? I've got money, yes. Power, privacy, sure. But none of that means anything when every person in your life wants something from you instead of with you. Anika blinked. His voice hadn't risen, but there was something fierce behind it. I want you, Anika, he said, softer now. Not as a guest or a fantasy or a beautiful woman I shared a week with. I want the version of you who fights for what she needs, who walks barefoot into the storm and doesn't flinch. That woman, she could build something real here. With me. Her heart slammed against her ribs. I can't just disappear into paradise, she said. I have responsibilities. Elise. A job. A job that's killing you, he interrupted gently. A life that's not yours anymore. She opened her mouth to argue, but the words didn't come. Because he was right. She'd been surviving, not living. Proving herself to people who'd already decided how small to see her. Carrying weight that wasn't hers to hold. And here was this man, complicated, wounded, too intense for his own good. But looking at her like she was the only thing that made sense in his world. Say something, Nikolai said, voice suddenly quieter. She reached for his hand. I don't know the exact path yet, she whispered. But I think. I'm ready to stop walking the wrong one. His fingers laced with hers. And for the first time, she felt steady. 2 weeks later, the New York skyline looked smaller than she remembered. Anika stood in her apartment, her now nearly empty apartment. Boxed-up books stacked by the door, wardrobe picked clean. Her resignation letter had been submitted with no fanfare. Her manager hadn't even asked why. Just nodded and marked it as final. It was strange, she thought, how life could collapse and rebuild itself so quietly. A week ago, she'd sat across from Lena in their favorite cafe, clutching a mug of chai she hadn't touched, whispering the truth that had been rising in her chest since the storm. I don't want to go back to who I was. Lena had just smiled, the kind of smile that said I was hoping you'd say that. Now here she was, one suitcase, one boarding pass, one decision that felt terrifying and exhilarating all at once. She wasn't running away. She was running toward. Eden Isle shimmered on the horizon, emerald and gold against the endless blue. As the small boat approached the dock, the scent of salt and jasmine hit her like memory. The same woman greeted her, smile wide and familiar. Welcome back, Ms. Desai, she said. Or shall I say, welcome home? Anika smiled, her chest tight with something close to disbelief. She climbed the path barefoot, suitcase in hand, heart thudding. The villa loomed ahead, sunlit and beautiful, but her eyes searched for him. She found Nikolai near the pool, shirt sleeves rolled, hair tousled by the breeze. He stood with his back to her, talking softly to Luca, who immediately perked up and bounded her way. Nikolai turned at the sound, and when he saw her, his entire face changed. Relief. Wonder. A slow, stunned smile. You came back, he said, breath catching in his throat. No, Anika replied, dropping her suitcase. I chose this. She walked to him, their eyes locked, her hands sliding up his chest as he pulled her into him like he'd never let her go again. Their kiss was warm, real, and grounded in something deeper than heat. This was no longer escape. It was foundation, the beginning of something neither of them had planned, something terrifying, beautiful, and fully theirs.